On today's show, Nick Backstrom's future in hockey is in Sweden.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the past 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about Tom Wilson as he has eyes for Team Canada for the Olympics. Does he have what it takes? I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about Alex Ovechkin and will this be his final season with the Capitals? Now listen, I know I've spoke ad nauseum about will he or will he not. What do some of his fellow teammates, what does Wilson and Strome think about his potential retirement? But just to get it going here, the big news that's not really too surprising is that Nick Backstrom, who we know spent last season on the LTIR, and we thought maybe the end of his time playing hockey, will be playing this coming season in Sweden for Brynäs IF in Gavalla, Sweden, and kind of a bookend. If you will, on his career. He started off playing with Brynäs IF and played a long career in the NHL, assisting on more Alex Ovechkin goals than anyone else. And what better way to put another bookend on it, playing on that very same team in Sweden. Let's dive into that in segment number 1. And just talking about Nick Backstrom, if you are a longtime Capitals fan, you know that he is a guy that kind of shuns the limelight. He is a guy that eats a steady diet of humble pie and will ask for seconds. He is just not a guy that likes to talk about himself or his accomplishments. He feels more comfortable talking about the accomplishments of others, more specifically Alex Ovechkin, a huge piece. Number 19 will go down as one of the greatest Capitals to ever lace up the skates. One of the better centers, I'm going to say, ever in the National Hockey League. So let's talk about the man, the myth, the legend of Nicklas Backstrom and what the future is. And, like I talked about, he was the guy that was always happy having Alex Ovechkin at center stage, while he just quietly went about his business. And man, you talk about what a career, 1,105 games and all of them in a Capitals jersey. That's rare. And it speaks to his loyalty to this team. And I think also speaks to, him just really like playing with Alex Ovechkin, playing on truly great Capitals teams year after year after year. And it ended the only way Backstrom would want it. No farewell tour, no dramatic press conference, no final lap on the ice, just a quiet exit after a win against San Jose, just the way he had always operated, understated, professional, and humble. And I remember back, there was the question. We knew that he was facing the hip resurfacing procedure that he said that, listen, I didn't want to have it done. It just came to that. I couldn't tie my shoes. I couldn't play with my kids. He didn't, like I say, he didn't want to do it. He loves playing hockey, still does. But there was some risk, some inherent risk. And, he had the procedure done, played hockey over the summer in Sweden and played rather well. And former GM Brian McClellan said that, he wasn't real sure about his future. But when he joined the Capitals in the fall, he was playing well. But that didn't last too long, as he saw that the hip resurfacing procedure wasn't responding the way that he had hoped for. And I think to a certain extent, he did not want to stand in the way of progress. At the time, Connor McMichael, I think, was kind of breathing down his neck for that center position. As we know, he played on the wing this last season, but I think that he understood the situation. He saw the writing on the wall and stepped away. And looking back on it, 3 days after that game, on October 29th, 2023, Backstrom told the world what we all feared: he could not keep playing. That surgically repaired hip, it just would not cooperate. After years of battling through pain, after trying to come back the right way, he stepped away. And a lot of, credit goes out to him for doing that. A tip of the hat that he didn't want to wait for, the coaches to say, or the GM to say, this isn't working. He saw the writing on the walls. He saw that he wasn't getting the production. And I think if you can recollect back that Spencer Carberry was also talking about that he didn't feel like he was playing at 100% as well. So I think that he saw it. I think the coaching staff saw it. And ultimately, it was the right thing to do to step away. Had to be a bit of a tough thing, as he is a guy that, even though he is a guy that plays, very humbly, that he still took playing hockey very seriously, and it was very hard for him to step away. But looking back on it, no fanfare, just a press release, a legend quietly leaving the NHL stage. And, oftentimes, players will talk about, this is my final season. And, this kind of ties in with what I've talked about with Alex Ovechkin, that there's no final lap. Not every arena that he plays at this coming season is Alex Ovechkin going to have, his farewell. This is the last time I'm playing in this arena, in that arena, in this arena. I think, it reinforces my belief, talking about Ovechkin, being that this is the final year of his contract, that, he could very well step away, somewhat similar to what Nicklas Backstrom is doing. But bringing it back to number 19, Backy here, here's the thing. His hockey journey is not over. You think it would have been, the hip resurfacing procedure didn't work well enough for him to play hockey in the NHL for the Capitals, but still feels like he can play well enough to play what is, to be clear here, for Brynäs IF, is still professional hockey in the Swedish Hockey League. So to say that this is some sort of beer league is not the case. He's still playing pro hockey. And Backstrom's going home, literally back to Gavla. I'm sorry, I'm not nailing those pronunciations. Sweden, back to Brynäs IF. If the team where it all started for him before the 2006 draft. And a great moment for him. And I'm glad in a lot of ways, and I'm rooting for him more than anything else, that I hope that he just knocks it out of the park this season. They've got a press conference that was today, and unless something goes sideways, which we know it didn't, they're going to roll him out for Brynäs IF this next season. This was an evolving story that I was working on over the last couple of days. But talk about a poetic way of ending your time in hockey, that we know that he's going to be playing at least one season where it all started, and then take it from there, ending where it all began for him, full circle. And that's what we love to see. And, like I said, I hope that, that hip resurfacing procedure and everything that's going on with his hip is good enough that he is going to be able to play the full season. Between his last NHL game and the end of his contract this summer, Backstrom only spoke to the media once. Classic Backstrom style. It wasn't even about him. It was about Ovechkin chasing down Gretzky's record. And I remember they kind of tried to ask him about what it's like about assisting on so many Alex Ovechkin goals, and he turned it completely around again and just put the credit squarely on Ovechkin. And I think ultimately what works so well in their relationship is that Alex Ovechkin, especially in his younger days, loved the limelight. And Nick Backstrom was the quiet guy that just set up Alex Ovechkin to look really good. He tried to brush off praise, said, this is all about him. I'm not going to take any credit, even though he assisted on, get this, 279 of Ovi's 897. That's absurd. That's history. That's a partnership for the ages. I think that, when we take a look back on a good 1-2 punch, that number 19 and number 8 will be two of the best to ever work in tandem ever. But if you talk about it, never credit for Nick Backstrom. It was about the team. It was about Ovechkin. It was about loyalty. It was about being a Capital. And, that's what could almost make you feel emotional about it, especially if you're a longtime Capitals fan, is just his loyalty to his friend, to this organization, to this city, that let's tip a hat, to Nick Backstrom, a guy that has been extremely loyal over the years to the Capitals. He once said it was pretty cool seeing to be able to make this franchise from not being a hockey city to being a hockey city. You think about how Backstrom and Ovechkin were here when the Capitals kind of really took it to the next level, that it was Backstrom, it was Ovechkin, all these kind of players that really helped revolutionize, I guess I'm going to say, hockey in the district. I know there were great teams and great rosters in years before, but I think that era, that what I'm going to dub, and many have dubbed, the Rock the Red era, is what really put the Capitals on the map. Said his first year they had maybe 5,000 fans in the stands, and then Rock the Red, the sellouts, the cup run, the culture was amazing. That, of course, pinnacle or peaked in 2018 they won the Stanley Cup. But if you think of the rosters between the time that he was drafted and, the time he stepped away, some truly great players came through Washington, and true greatness. Now, I know they only won the one Stanley Cup, but still many great seasons between then, winning the President's Trophy, these kind of things, that he was all a part of building that. Spencer Carberry said it best. He said he's one of the greatest Capitals of all time. Ovechkin called him a brother. Carlson said he was a pillar since his time that he retired. And now he rides off quietly to play one more year. That's what it's penciled in Sweden, not for the money, not for the headlines, just for the love of the game and to the hometown crowd. You take a look at it, that it's not the first time. We saw Kuznetsov also try to go back home to relive his time in playing hockey in Russia. But at the end of the day, cheers to Backy. Once a Capital, always a Capital. One of the best to ever lace up the skates for the Capitals. And a special moment for him. And, like I say, I'm very happy that he's going to be able to find a way to play hockey, pro hockey, back in Sweden. All right, so after the break here, we'll talk about, will this be it for Alex Ovechkin? Listen, I've spoke ad nauseum about the future of Alex Ovechkin. Will he play another season? Will he sign an extension? I'll discuss all of that and much more straight ahead. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's all like having your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I got a chance to use Monarch, and I got a chance to see how I was spending my money well. I was spending some of my money on retirement, in some cases not so smartly, spending it on going out to eat and food delivery. Then I changed my ways with the help of Monarch Money. And one of the other cool features of it is if you have a significant other in your life, you can help plan your financial future. There is so much to love about Monarch Money. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in segment 2 here, we're talking about, could this be the final season for Alex Ovechkin? Listen, I've said my thoughts, And, I'm just drawing a lot of that based on his age. I'm drawing a lot of that based on the fact that of the email that went out to the season ticket holders, the fact that his wife said that this is going to be his final season. Alex Ovechkin rebuffing it. The truth has got to live somewhere in the middle. But what do his teammates, two of the players that know him the best, what does Strome and what do Wilson have to say about his retirement? Let's dive into that in segment number 2. So will this finally be it? Is this Alex Ovechkin's final lap around the rink here? His final season in the NHL? Let's be honest, this guy's going to be 40 in September. Not too old, I guess, depending on how old you are now, in your regular life. But when you're a professional athlete, especially a professional hockey player, let's just say 40 isn't young. He's in the last year of his 5-year deal, and the chatter, it's getting louder and louder, and some of it's for me as well. Everyone wants to know, is 2025 and 2026, is that going to be his final season in the NHL? And listen, that's what I've talked about on this show, as he's accomplished the things that he wants to accomplish. He has, caught and passed Gretzky. He's won a Stanley Cup in 2018. What is there left to accomplish? Dylan Strome said it plainly. He says, we don't know if it's his final year, unquote. He called the retirement rumors preposterous. And honestly, he could be right. Ovechkin told that in a story. He said, a year will pass and we will think about it. We will live and see. As I take a look at it, I stand by my statement that this will be his final season, but ultimately only Alex Ovechkin knows. We can only draw conclusions based on what we've observed. You can see many, many things saying one thing and one thing saying the other, and you add that up into the calculator. What do you see? The season ticket holders, what we have heard from his wife, the accomplishments that he said, and the only thing on the other side of that coin is Ovechkin saying, we'll wait and see. A bit ambiguous, I guess you could say. That doesn't sound like a guy that is 100% for sure on his future. There have been no contract talks yet, nothing official from the Capitals or Ovi's camp. But one thing's clear, he's still got that fire. I'm not trying to deny that. I think he is going to bring it in 25-26. If it is his final season or if it's not, he's not a guy that generally mails it in. He's got that competitive edge. He's still producing. He's finished last season with 897. That's 897, chasing down what he should get, 900 goals in short order. If he hits 900 this season, which, he should accomplish in the earlier part of the season, does he, ride off into the sunset, or does he keep chasing down goals? See how far he can stretch that record out. Again, only Ovechkin knows, but draw your own conclusions. Tom Wilson says that never count him out. He said, quote, he could play 2-3 more years, he told NHL.com. He loves to score. He loves the game, unquote. Could Alex Ovechkin play 2 or 3 more seasons? For sure. Does he want to? What's in it for him? What is he chasing down? I don't think he wants to go down like Jaromir Jagr, that's just kind of beating a dead horse. At some point in your career, you need to know when to step aside and exit the stage. And let's be real here. Ovechkin's never been about the records. He's been asked before, when are you going to pass, Gretzky and all these kind of things. He's always said it's not about that. It's about winning another cup. He loves being a part of this team. He is a Capital through and through. Nothing will ever take that away from him. He loves the grind. He loves the locker room. He loves the camaraderie. It's got to be difficult for him to even think about stepping away. And for guys like Dylan Strome, having Ovi around has been career changing. You take a look at Stromer, who put up career numbers. Stromer had his best season ever riding shotgun with Ovechkin. 29 goals, 82 points, and that assist on goal number 895. If you're a guy like Strome, you want to keep those good times coming. He'll be telling that story to his grandkids. You remember that Ovechkin guy? Yeah, that was me. I was in on that action. He said, quote, to be on his line for most of the 3 seasons in Washington has been an honor, unquote. So is this the end? Honestly, we really don't know. Ovi doesn't know, but until we get an answer, soak it in. If this is his final lap, his final season, then drink it all in. And even if it's not, when Alex Ovechkin is out on the ice, it is some great hockey. That is what we know for sure, because when he walks away, whenever that is, we won't see another like him anytime soon. That's one of the things I've talked about on this show ad nauseum as well, is live in this moment. That when we're talking about Ovechkin and when we saw him do the unthinkable thing, catching, passing Gretzky, being on the team that won the first Stanley Cup, the only Stanley Cup, that you're seeing it in real time, or you saw it in real time. It wasn't in some grainy archival footage. That whether it is or is not his final season, this has been some of Alex Ovechkin's best hockey. All right, so coming up here after the break, Wilson eyes Team Canada. Does he have what it takes, and will he be selected? I'll discuss straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. So in the final segment of the show, we're talking about number 43, your future captain, Tom Wilson. And will he be playing for Team Canada in the Olympics? One of the things I know that was difficult for him is the Four Nations face-off and not participating in it. I think that he definitely wanted to represent his country. And when it is his time and it's Canada's time, on the international stage, will he be on Team Canada? Let's dive into that in the final segment of today's show. And he said it himself during the Four Nations face-off. He was glued to the TV. He was, his adrenaline was flowing, watching all of the fights, McDavid lighting it up, the crowd roaring, thinking to himself, sitting at home, I should be in that game. An injustice, if you ask me. I think that Wilson would have done his country proud, especially with all the fighting that they could have definitely used the Capitals' sheriff, if you will, to help even the score. He told NHL.com, all I could think about is that I wished I was there so much, so badly. And, that was the thing of it. He wasn't the only Capital that was glossed over. I'm not sure what the case was there, that the Capitals did not get the love that they deserved in the Four Nations face-off. And, because listen, I believe him, because this guy doesn't want to represent Team Canada at the Olympics. He's chasing it down like it's Game 7. He would have brought that compete level like none other. So now I think he's got a real shot. I think that, we're starting to see what kind of player he truly is. That, when he was first in the league, the perception was that he was just tough with no skill. But putting up 30 plus goals this past season, he cannot be denied. Team Canada is hosting the Olympic camp next month in Calgary, and Wilson's expected to be one of the candidates. And if you're asking me, honestly, I think that he's earned it. The past season was the best of his career, 33 goals, 32 assists, 11 on the PP. He was plus 20. He still had 100 PIM minutes. No surprise there, but he evolved. Like I've talked about on this show, that you're seeing a more mature Tom Wilson. He realizes that he's best served playing on the ice, not getting involved in the extracurricular activity, sitting in the penalty box. That he's not necessarily that enforcer anymore. He's a power forward, a leader, a guy who can change with a hit. We saw that with the Carrier hit in the first round of the playoffs against the Canadiens, that he can be physical if the time calls for it, but I think he's trying to lean more into his skill. Dylan Strome said it best. He said he'll beat you any way you want, whether it's a skill game, whether it's a physical game. He's got what it takes. And you take a look at it. If you're Team Canada, you want that guy. You want the goal scoring. You want that enforcer feel. You want the physical presence on a smaller NHL ice. You want a guy who can crash the crease, bury the rebounds, kill penalties, and drop the mitts if needed. And you got to think that if he's selected, he's going to try to want to make good for some of those missed opportunities. Wilson said, quote, "It's a dream your whole life to be mentioned in that realm." He's talking about the Olympic team full of superstars, McDavid, Crosby, Makar, Marchand, and hopefully himself, number 43, Tom Wilson. He's not just dreaming it, he's doing it. So I think that he has what it takes. And the question is will he get the nod? Will he be on the roster for Team Canada? Listen, I think Capitals fans, we know what he brings. Like I've said in this segment here, the physicality, the leadership. But like I say, the evolution, the more mature Tom Wilson, that he has the skills to do what it takes to score goals, have that enforcer aspect if needed. But I think the missing ingredient that was on the Four Nations face-off and doesn't need to be the missing ingredient for Team Canada in the Olympics. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me in this edition of Locked On Capitals. And when you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered all summer long, 5 days a week, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.